Welcome, everyone, to the second night of Amateur Astronomer Association live stream of the Great Conjunction. Tonight, there will not be a lot of live streaming from New York based on the whiteout, but we are excited to be joined by a number of our astrophotographers at the club. And I'm co-hosted here with Irene Pease, who you may remember from last night. She's in a slightly warmer locale tonight. Irene, you want to say hello to the...
Hi, everyone. I'm not freezing tonight, and I got some astronomy fashion that we can talk about at some point if it comes to that. So this is the telescope you might recognize from last night. We're inside and nice and warm now, but BPT is still here just to, hang out in the background. But looking forward to seeing some really great images. I know I got images last night that some people may have been subjected to. So, yeah, much better images that we want to be sharing tonight from some of our amazing astrophotographers.
Yeah, agreed. And I guess might as well with that, it's probably the right segue to Stan Honda, who is joining us tonight. Stan is actually the head of our astrophotography club and group within Amateur Astronomer Association. Stan, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm a professional photographer based here in New York. I'm also a board member of the AAA. So I help coordinate the astrophotography Google group, which is a very active group. If you're a member of the club, ask to join the astrophotography group because it's pretty lively, and we share. There's an incredible array of photos that it's shared, both wide-angle landscape, nightscape pictures, and also deep sky images taken through telescopes or telephoto lenses. And there is a pretty incredible quality of images that are taken by a lot of the club members from New York City and the region around it. So definitely join up to the group if you're AAA.
Yeah, I think we're over 100 strong in that club. So it's a very, pretty sizable group and a lot of expertise there across all different types of astrophotography. So thanks, Stan, for your leadership on that. So Stan, what I guess what are the ways that you're enjoying this conjunction?
It's pretty interesting to see the planets get closer and closer. I think since the summer, they've been visible in the evening sky, Jupiter and Saturn. And so we've seen them fairly far apart in the summer. Then I was in a couple of dark sky places in September and November. So then they were getting closer and closer in the evening sky after sunset. And now it's kind of exciting to see them, to look out in the sky, even just with your naked eye, and you see them very, very close. I mean, I think probably Monday, if it's clear out, they'll probably, to the naked eye, look almost like one bright object.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. There's a question in from Chris Rocco, who asked where the telescope's being set up tonight. Well, I think in the New York area, we do have some members that are sort of hoping for a window to come free, but right now it looks like it's pretty much a whiteout out there in terms of clouds. So I don't think we're going to likely see live telescope views tonight, Chris. What you'll see is we're going to go and show either video footage or pictures that have been taken by our astrophotographers either last night or over the course of the last several days as we head into the sort of the closest point of the conjunction. So that's a quick answer to Chris's question. Stan's very rough, but yeah. So you've been watching the lead up to this. What are some of the ways you tend to capture images in New York City?
When I'm in New York City, I try to look for an interesting landscape. A lot of my pictures are taken out in more wilderness areas or national parks, but in the city, the skyline really is the landscape. So I think I look for interesting skylines, and as it happens, the planets are setting, getting very close to the horizon, very close to the Statue of Liberty, as you view it from Battery Park. So for me, that's almost a natural place to go for pictures with a long telephoto lens, because then you can get both the statue and the planets as they're getting closer in one picture.
Hey, Stan, would you mind maybe doing two things? One, sharing that picture, the pictures you've been taking of the planets near the Statue of Liberty, and then also maybe describe for the viewers how do you know where the planets are going to be? How do you set that up so that how do you know you're going to be in the right place to get that? Because it's obviously takes some geometry to work that out. Do you have those pictures to share now?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
pictures.
let me put you
Just kind of.
on. You get full screen now.
Okay, let me.
And just as Stan is pulling that up, I want to mention that he will be teaching a class for AAA members. So if you want to join AAA to take the class, if you're already a member, that announcement just went out to all members today. So you can, yes, you can take the class. Definitely check that out. It's one of our most popular classes, so it might be selling out this week. If you're interested, sign up soon. I'm already signed up.
They're virtual classes now, and so very very COVID friendly that way. But I think we do, because they'll be outdoors. There will be opportunities probably for small ad hoc groups outside to be socially distanced, safe, and still do some field exercises and field trips around the class, right, Stan?
Yeah, in previous classes we had 4 classroom sessions and 2 field trips where we went out, one in Central Park and to a darker sky site. This class will be composed of 6 classroom sessions on Zoom. So I'll be able to go into a little bit more detail on a few things like composition and planning and working in Photoshop, things like that, and then getting class participation of having people describe their photos, and then I'll be working on processing, I think, some volunteers from the class if you're willing for that. So John, can you can see the picture now?
I don't actually.
Oh, here. So that's what we're.
Your screen. So you just have to switch it to that tab that has the pictures, I think, Stan.
Let's see.
And someone was near a main street, it sounds like.
Not me.
Oh, wait a minute.
Not me. You guys are both in Manhattan, right? Ooh.
Yeah, does that work?
Yes,
Yeah,
beautiful, Stan.
Looks great.
Okay, this is from Sunday night, December 13th, and this is from Battery Park City. Actually, Battery Park, the area to the east of the Liberty ferries, that area of Battery Park. And so I'm looking at the Statue of Liberty, and there's Jupiter at the bottom and Saturn at the top. And as you can see, that they're basically the width of one statue apart. So this is what they were definitely farther apart than the diameter of the moon.
And what kind of camera is this, Stan? You want to just kind of give a camera and lens?
Sure. I'm using a Nikon D850 here, a full frame camera, and a 500 millimeter lens, a 500 millimeter Nikon lens. It's the actual image was was larger than this, and I cropped in just to show the statue and the planets.
And I like that you mentioned it's less than a statue width. Like that's a New York unit of measurement, is one Statue of Liberty width or height.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the planets just under one statue wide here,
and like the New York version of a parsec, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. New Yorkers will know. If you're outside of New York, you might not know about this.
That's beautiful. And then I thought I saw another one, Stan, of them a few nights later that you also were able to take. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is last night. As you can see, there's a pretty big difference over the span of 6 days of the planets getting closer or appearing closer and closer from our perspective.
Yeah. Now it's just a statue arm.
So it's an arm length instead of the whole statue width. So let me go back to Sunday. This is Sunday evening, and then this is last night. So
basically half the distance. Yeah, they've closed.
Yeah, so how close they've come, and there seems to be a little confusion as to if they're going to actually, if there's going to be an eclipse, but they're going to become very close, but they're not going to eclipse one another.
Yeah. No, none of that. So, and then, but interestingly, and Mark made the point last night that, our distance to Saturn is about the same distance, or sorry, our distance to Jupiter is the same as Jupiter's distance to Saturn, each, about 500 million miles, give or take.
Wow.
So so they're not close together in real life, but they appear close to us. So
yeah, and then let me show you a few pictures. Thursday night also happened to be clear a couple nights ago. So I went to Central Park. I live on the Upper East Side, and so Central Park is not too far. So I walked down to the reservoir and shot over the reservoir toward Midtown, and it had a very beautiful crescent moon with some earthshine, which is kind of rare from New York City to see the dark portion of the moon being illuminated by Earthlight. And then you could see the two planets on the right side of the frame, just above the buildings on the skyline.
It's a beautiful shot to really give the perspective of how close together they are, with both the moon as reference as well as the sort of buildings within the skyline of Manhattan on the upper, in this case, the Upper West Side.
Yeah. So I kind of did a comparison picture. As the planets got lower, I switched to the long telephoto lens. This was a 70 to 200 millimeter zoom at about 135 millimeters. So I was able to get both the moon and the planets in the same picture. And then I switched to the 500 millimeter lens. This is cropped in a little bit. So here are the two planets.
Lower, yeah.
Almost as close as they were last night, but still a little bit farther apart. And there's I think that might be an apartment building. So I also shot a picture of the moon that night with the same lens. And so using the comparison, the same lens and also at the same scale, I inset a picture of the moon onto the photo of the two planets. So Thursday night, they were just under a moon width apart. Dropping, we're not using a statue in this comparison.
Something more universal that, non-New Yorkers can grasp that as well, right?
Right. You could everybody could see the moon, and you know how wide the moon is. So the planets, at least Thursday night, were just under, and then of course last night and tonight they're much closer.
I always love looking at the planets against, and we've shot out in the park together before. I always love seeing them with my eyes, and then also just shooting them as they rise or set over the buildings in New York. I always think it's cool to see the juxtaposition of the buildings with people inside, or kind of empty homes but lit up or not, and then the wisps of smoke or steam coming out of different things. It's a great photo.
Yeah, I think it's a great perspective that you see this solar system beyond our Earth, and then you see these terrestrial features right in front of you, and it kind of puts our whole universe in perspective.
Yeah, beautiful perspective with the buildings, and I was going to say beautiful perspective with the buildings, like you said, just very iconic, like with Statue of Liberty, with our skyline, and I really like that inside the picture that you sent out earlier today that had this. It's just gorgeous.
Well, the interesting thing about both of these places that I was shooting from, Central Park and Battery Park, is you could see you can actually see fairly close to the horizon, which when I realized this, it was kind of astonishing. The planets here are only maybe 2 or 3 degrees above the horizon, as seen from Central Park, and the picture from Battery Park of the Statue of Liberty. The Jupiter was 1 degree above the horizon in that picture. And you think of New York City as being a lot of tall buildings and a place where, at least in parts of Manhattan, you can hardly see the sky. But in certain open areas like Central Park and Battery Park, you really can see pretty close to the actual horizon. Great. So that's the last of my pictures for today, John. You want me to stop the sharing?
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Stan. I really appreciate it. And do you take a tripod with you? Maybe just also kind of give a sense of what it's like to kind of go on one of your excursions into New York City to photograph this.
I managed to keep everything in a fairly small package. I put my equipment in a backpack because I'm traveling on the subway. So I have a kind of a medium-sized backpack that I could put in the long lens, a couple more lenses, and my camera. I also have a waist pack that I carry. I have a remote wireless remote trigger so that I could trigger the camera without touching it. Important things like, especially now, hand warmers to keep my hands from freezing. And Irene probably knows about that, and so does John. And I carry a pretty sturdy tripod. So it's basically the tripod in my backpack that I could take on the subway. And for me, I'm on the number 6 line, so I just take that to a express stop, and I take the 4 or the 5 all the way down to Battery Park, and I'm there. When I go to Central Park, I just walk over. So it's a matter of making sure I don't have too heavy of a bag when I'm walking.
Two things. Sorry. Well, I was going to say 2 things I want to highlight. Like, one, portability, which is like super important. I know most of our observers and astrophotographers, like, their kit fits like in something they can easily take on the train. Not all of our members drive and everything. So yeah, definitely having something that's very portable. Just like Stan said, like, mine's not so portable, but I have a more portable version. And then also, yeah, definitely dressing for the weather is so important.
And we have a new guest of this contest, Irene.
And oh yeah, so Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you for tagging in and joining us. We're just chatting.
To bust in on your party here.
Yeah. Hey, it's one big celestial party out there.
You're talking about lugging telescopes. This is an eternal challenge here.
Right.
And every new person says, I want a telescope too. I want the biggest one possible. Will you carry it anywhere?
Exactly.
Will it ever go 20 feet from your garage? You know, we gotta worry about it.
Yeah, that's why I suggest people start with binoculars. But
Yes.
I don't know. Do you have any special plans to view the conjunction or anything you're celebrating with there?
I thought I got a good view last night, and then I sort of tweeted out because I looked at the cloud maps of the United States, and the entire Eastern time zone looked pretty good. There was some cirrus in mid-states and a little bit over towards Chicago, but most of the Eastern time zone was crispy skies. So I thought, dude, get out now, because I don't know what the next few days will bring. But I've also tried to keep people sort of sensible about it. All right. As we know, there's this urge that I think we all have to want to believe that if something happens in the sky while we are alive to watch it, that it's something special for us. All right. And then I remind people, the universe has been around for like 14 billion years. Earth has been turning for 4.5 billion. And you think something special is lined up with your existence on this earth? So what I've tried to convey to people is the fact that it's possible for something to be rare but uninteresting, right? Because the newspapers will say planetary conjunction hasn't happened in 60,000 years, and then they handpick, well, that star with that planet and that moon, and yeah, but if every year for the next 60,000 years, there's something else that won't repeat for 60,000 years. You got one of these every year. So I've tried to communicate that, but I failed.
I think that's okay. Yeah, so I'm trying to do a 2021 skies with Ted Williams, like we normally do at Hayden, and so we're gonna do one.
Does he still carry his bat?
his bat?
He used to carry a baseball bat, and not that we would ever confuse him for the actual Ted Williams. No, he is an actual Ted Williams, but the Red Sox Ted Williams. He carried we had him at the Hayden Planetarium. The man had a baseball bat.
He had lightsabers. They were lightsabers for like showing directions. Are you sure they weren't the lightsabers? I don't remember that.
This is long ago, before anybody had the technology to walk around with anything that resembled a lightsaber. But he's still got some kind of weapon in his hand. Okay.
I will
what did you do with him?
So we would do the seasonal skies or the next year's sky. So we're like trying to think of like, all right, what's going to be really exciting in 2021? And like you said, there's always something that we can pick out. So it's kind of special in a way that it's like, this is a neat thing that you should see in the sky because you won't have a chance to see it again. But in the sense like, yeah, there's neat things that happen every year. Like you should
That's
always
right.
look
So
up. I think that's the point.
If you specify, when was the last time Jupiter and Saturn got this close? Then you come up with the two dates, 400 years ago and 400 years before that. So it feels like you don't want to miss it. And I agree. But you started out with that condition. If instead you ask the different statistical question, how often do any two planets get that close to each other? And let's throw the moon in there too. In my lifetime, I've seen the moon occult. Forget how close they get. Moon went smack dab in front of Saturn, and so if you broaden the question, then people can line up many such fun conjunctions.
There are very many syzygies. Lots of worlds in our solar system to provide very many syzygies.
Now, I just saw a telescopic single view of a friend of mine took an interesting picture of both Saturn and Jupiter, where you can see their moons, the Galilean moons and the brighter moons of Saturn. And I didn't know, I was a little disappointed to learn that the rotation axes are like in a severe angle to each. It's like, what? Please, shouldn't you all be aligned? Aren't you? We're in a syzygistic moment. Give me some rotational alignments here. Yeah, and one was at least 25, 30 degrees angled to the other. I'm talking about the plane of the moons, which is coincides with their rotation.
Jupiter isn't tilted, right? Jupiter's its axis is mostly aligned, and then Saturn is almost like 27 degrees, not quite 30, I think. So
in its rotation axis. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So its major moons are along that axis. So that's why when you look at Jupiter,
it was more fun to be shocked by it than to have expected it.
It's nice that we can all be surprised every now and then.
Yeah. So I think it's if it's an occasion to get people to look. I'm disappointed to learn how close Saturn and Jupiter were to the sun 400 years ago, 1626 or whatever it was, because maybe no one saw it, even if Galileo knew it was happening. There's no reason why he wouldn't have figured this out. This is late enough. The boy was into his telescope in the night sky by then. He's drawing pictures of the what did he call them? The
Medici stars.
Yeah, the stars. Yeah. What did he actually? The Medicean stars. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So obviously the Galilean moons. He was that plugged in. I'm thinking he would have known this was impending, even if he couldn't see it. And so, you guys, anybody here know how close they were to the sun?
I looked, it was about 7 degrees, a little over 7 degrees at sunset. So I think it would have been visible, just when you compare it to today's, right?
Yeah, but you need like a really steep angle to the horizon. So where was he? Padua? Where was he in 1926?
Oh, that's a good point. I was looking at it from New York City. So, he would have been further south. So probably.
So it would have been better for him.
Been better for him. So he should have probably had, I don't know, 12, 15 maybe. So
yeah, because you want as perpendicular to the sun as you can going down. Otherwise you lose it all, right? In fact, we have friends and relatives in Alaska, and they're asking when can they see this. And I didn't quite check all the angles, but the sun right now sets at about 2:30 in the afternoon in Fairbanks, and and they have long sustained twilights, as you would imagine. And I was just trying to figure out, is there a contest now between how low it's getting in the sky and how dark the sky gets surrounding it? And even if it doesn't come through, they had beautiful aurora during the meteor showers. So they got it. It'd
be cool to have a little aurora while you have the planets going as well.
Yeah. You can't argue that, even if you can't,
right.
Nothing else
Plus,
works.
also, I was interested when I looked at it on Sky Safari Pro 6 that the Shoemaker-Levy comet, or Levy, however you say it, was actually looked like it would have been quite visible in the night sky, at least the way it was shown on Sky Safari, and even further apart when you go back 400 years behind that. So that was kind of interesting, right around Jupiter, which was kind of cool.
So David Levy pronounces his name Levy, so I think we'll call him that.
That seems like an appropriate way to say it then.
Yeah. Whatever people say, that's usually the good.
Thank you for clarifying.
So what do you guys do if it's cloudy now in New York and it's the AAA? Do you have folks from outside the region who might have clear skies right now?
That's a great question, and we do actually. Go ahead, Irene.
So I was going to say we have a couple questions from our viewers here. We had someone who's asking about with the pandemic.
It's a cool app. I want this app.
StreamYard. It's good.
StreamYard. Any plans to start what we're doing? Yeah, so we do have some other viewing planned, but for tonight, since it's cloudy, we have a few intrepid observers who are kind of lined up in the wings just in case we get a clear patch. But then we also will have probably not a lot through the winter, but possibly some kind of gently advertised public viewing again in the spring. We've had just a couple events this fall. We've had to be really careful because of the pandemic, but we have a whole crew that's put together ways that we can do some of that safely with like distancing and collecting information for potential contact tracing, which we fortunately haven't needed.
Irene, you just answered his question when his first sentence was, "I'm a new member to the AAA."
Yes.
So you could have said, "Welcome to You didn't do it. I'll do it." Eduardo, welcome to the AAA. I have been a member for probably 50 years because that's how old I see. I got some gray here. See coming in. It's just so it's what makes it special is these are people who care about the night sky, yet live in a place where no one actually has a relationship with the night sky because we live among tall buildings and streetlights. And in the old days, there was a lot of air pollution. So these are desperately interesting people desperately interested in the universe from a place that does not normally lend itself to that. So you have all these innovative ways. In the old days, we used to meet on the 86th floor of the Empire State Building. That was fun. You had a beautiful view of in the twilight skies of the setting moons and planets over New Jersey. So just Eduardo, welcome. Irene just was rude and just answered your question.
I'm so sorry for answering the question.
Yeah, today's technology. I mean, we have over 100 members, and that of the members, the over 100 are in the astrophotography section of it. That have its own kind of separate club within this, Neil. And
I have to say this. In my day, we had to develop the film in the camera, and you didn't even know if your picture came out until like a week later. So, right. And we did that in the snow, just so you know.
Today with gear that you can fit in a backpack, you can have the, galaxies pop on your screen in like a couple minutes, even in New York City. It's that.
Yeah. And have you guys been reviewing those digital telescopes?
We've had a couple of them at different events. There's a number of them that are out now. The Stellina,
what I was thinking of. Yeah. A question. I just have a question. I was worried that since you're not actually like looking through an eyepiece, you're looking at a slowly accumulating image, digital image. I'm wondering, is that any different from me just Googling a pretty picture of Saturn? If you've been out on the field with people in the grass, what are people's reaction to it? Because I kind of like. Could just be old timer, right? Get off my lawn, old timer. I don't like anything new kind of thing. But if I take an eyepiece and I find Saturn and I can like move the telescope and Saturn is moving, there's a certain interactivity and a certain authenticity to that image my eye creates than the digital one that comes over the screen. So I'm just wondering, what have you found from either the membership or others?
Yeah, well, great question, great points. I think what I've found is from my own experiences, as well as watching others in the public outreach events that we have, that the new generations are very into screens. And so whether that's coming from a laptop, coming from being broadcast to their phones, or looking through, it kind of looks like those old viewfinders to me, like you kind of go through. Like that's what the EV scope to me, when I've looked through it, it kind of, when I put my eye up to the eyepiece, it just kind of looks like a bit of a almost fake image. I guess if satellites were coming by, you'd actually see some of that. So there is some interactivity in some ways, but it's delayed, right?
You would see a streak across, yeah.
Yeah, you would see a streak, and it would, over time, the signal would be diluted there on it. But yeah, it's so the public, I think, is much more open to, because they're so much more used to screens. I think for maybe certain generations. For me personally, just seeing it through the eyepiece is what I need. And I think for Saturn, I think seeing it through the eyepiece would blow people away. I don't know if it'd be as impactful as a screen, to your point.
Okay, so what we're saying is add to Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, Gen Screen for astronomy. People who are completely content. I guess you got to be right, because was it like somebody came through town? It was like the Pope or somebody like singular in a situation. And there are people taking cell phone video of the Pope looking at the cell phone. I said, the man is there in person. Okay.
Right.
If you look at, use the photons coming from him. All right. And you got to look at the screen, look at the thing. And then, so then the event becomes what you recorded, not what you experienced. And so again, I could just be, get off my lawn, old man, but
no, I think there's powerful things about both, right? And so like, for me, I love looking at the Andromeda Galaxy with binoculars in New York City. I think it's very powerful and impactful to see it with, something that kind of just accentuates it a bit here in New York City. Naked eye in other places is nice.
And what kind of binoculars? What size binoculars?
I use this, like $59 pair of Celestron 12x60s, which are great for New York City.
Excuse me, it's 12x60. Okay.
They're heavier, but but I also
have the moon landing with a 12x60.
I also have a like a 10x50 pair that's also not too heavy.
A regular 10x50. Okay.
So but if you get smaller ones, it probably gets a little bit harder. But
yeah, sure.
But anyway, but then you compare that to being able to then just use a portable rig these days, whether it's one you put together or it's one you buy like an EV scope. That Andromeda Galaxy pops into great detail, as well as M110 and M32, and you've got this beautiful picture that people can say, "Oh wow, that's a galaxy," and it's 5 times the size of the moon, and it pops right up for them, albeit not through their eyepiece. Right. So
no, I'll give it to them. Generation screen, you got it.
I like the Gen screen. I think that's a good.
So Irene, are other questions out there?
Yeah, let's see if we're seeing other questions.
Let's see what we have. We have a comment. This was interesting. It says, my grandfather, David Miller, ringing in. I know another David Miller, probably a lot of David Millers out there. His grandfather was one of the early board members and a past president of AAA. I don't know if that name rings a bell, Neil. He has photo albums from the early 1930s of various AAA home-built contraptions to photograph and film solar eclipses, etc. Amazing engineering and very far from the digital photography of today.
Saying, get off my lawn. Cool. So just what's implicit in that note is that in the day, so we're talking 1930s up through early to mid 1970s even, there was an entire community of amateur telescope builders in the basement of the Hayden Planetarium. And the AAA was sort of run out of offices at the planetarium as a courtesy to that membership. And so you could take classes at the Hayden Planetarium, telescope making classes, and you'd grind your own lens and make your own tubes. And so that's what he said. Very different from the astrophotography of today, where you just buy the equipment, assemble it. You don't even have to point it. You just type in. You don't even have to align to Polaris. You don't have you get off my lawn.
I think we have some members though who do a lot. They do
directly your iPhone now. I mean, you don't have to do anything. The ASI Air Pro is really amazing. You like stick it up there and it just does everything for you. And it can broadcast. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, you talk to it. Yeah. Show me M31.
But you still have a lot of like these.
You like doing that, John? I feel like looking somewhere else.
AI
takes over our pointing devices.
I like the old school. So I've done the Messier Marathon. I've gotten 109 out of 110 with the old school manual. Just going.
He's showing off now. Oh.
So that's my highlight of my.
You must be president or something.
What's that?
So speaking of, we actually have our president. So John is our chairman of the board, and we have our president, Mr. Brian Berg, AAA president, who was going to pop in and say a few words.
Hello, Mr. Tyson and Mr. Bills.
We're only going to let you into this conversation if you tell us how many Messier objects have you recovered.
Too many to count. It might take a while.
You got out of that one. Okay. Okay.
How's everyone doing?
Yeah, good. I'm glad to be able to have time to check in with you guys. I've been a fan of the AAA forever. I just don't get to participate as actively as my soul wants me to. But I'm there, Irene. Irene sees me, if not daily, certainly weekly.
Thank you for making time for us
Yes,
tonight. It's
yes,
really-
thank you so much.
Post-COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm going to step out, and now you have the president and the CEO. So there's nothing I can add to that.
So hey, anything interesting about Saturn, Jupiter, its moons that you're kind of expecting to come on the horizon in the next years or decades that we should be thinking about, Neil?
Well, just so you know, Saturn and Jupiter are heavily competing with other solar system missions for the study of their moons. And so this includes Mars even. So if there's a mission to Mars that would incrementally add to what we already know, and it's in one pot of money for solar system missions, there's strong pull to go to the icy moons because we know so much less about them, and ultimately land and then go ice fishing possibly. And it turns out you don't have to dig a hole. Let's take Europa, for example. It's got, what, a kilometer of ice, right? You may not have to dig a hole all the way through. Who knows how we would do that anyway? But because one of the bits of evidence we know that it's icy is that the ice breaks and then reconnects. It breaks, shifts, and reconnects. So you see striations that have discontinuities in them, much of what you find in the in the Arctic Ocean. During the winter months, we still kind of have freezing there in the winter. And so the water can break and then refreeze. And so you see this in Europa. So if the water breaks, water below gurgles up and then freezes. So if that sort of upward movement of water carries microbes with it, or even fishes, European fishes, then it's, in principle, you don't have to dig through the kilometer of ice to see what's in the water. Just look at the ice that came up and refroze in the crevice. So you could have like freeze-dried fish. It could be a cool science fiction story.
Yeah,
so that's, for me,
grocery store and a gas station along the way to the next planet, right?
So for me, that's what's intriguing about those two planets as destinations going forward. And Saturn is my favorite planet. It was the first planet I saw through a telescope when I was 12 years old. And of course, that's enough to hook anybody, for life. And plus, I've seen several occasions, I can remember carefully if I thought about it, where Saturn was sort of edge on and then the rings disappear. And what Galileo said about the rings disappearing? He said in his notes, because he's observed it long enough for the cycle of orientations to take you there. And so he said, could Saturn have eaten his children? And I thought that was like really weird, creepy, until I read The Legend of Saturn. Okay. Saturn in Roman legends, probably Greek too, actually eats his children. Okay. So he was like linking actual, Greek mythologies to what he was seeing. Plus, he didn't know there were rings. He just thought they were objects sitting to the left and right, given the resolution of his telescope at the time. So that's my fun fact.
Great stories
about Saturn. And I'm not upset. I'm disappointed that the infamous hexagon, what's that, on the northern hemisphere of Saturn? That the famous hexagon was not predicted. I'm just, all right, we found the hexagon and we scratch our head. It's a little weird. And then somebody comes up with the explanation and everybody's happy with it. And I'm saying, people, don't tell me how inevitable that is if you didn't come up with it in advance. All right. Don't say, oh yeah, this is why. That's not as that's a post-diction. All right. Not a prediction. So I accept it because I read the paper. It looks legit. I'm just saying, don't tell me how clever you are if you explain something after the fact.
It does seem like truth is stranger than fiction, though, and some of these things, as I've heard some of the scientists that have explored this, it's like we just didn't have any idea. We just couldn't even have predicted these things. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and for a while there, I was saying, "Yep, the best explanation is aliens." I was like all in for about 10 minutes.
I love it.
It's never aliens. It's never aliens.
Or it's always aliens.
Yeah, it's either never or the aliens are doing it all, or we're all in a simulation.
Neil, I'm surprised you didn't mention anything about Saturn and this time of year with Saturnalia.
Oh, sure. Why not? So, of course, The Romans had a festival. I mean, you all know this. I mean, I would tell this to like the public who's completely clueless on astronomical matters. But in case some of you are brand new members, however many are out there, so the Romans, each of the gods had periods of celebration, and at this time of year, coincident with, of course, the equinox, the December equinox, it was a festival in honor of Saturn, Saturnalia. And it would go several days enclosing the equinox from the 18th to like the 23rd or 24th. And it was in that festival, masters would serve the slaves, and slaves would be the commander of the master. So it was like upside down day. Remember from elementary school?
It's opposite day.
Opposite day. Thank you. That's the term. So it was like opposite day, and people would exchange gifts. And so it was a time for celebration and just sort of taking stock in the year that you just had. And of course, it's after the 21st, the sun returns higher in the sky. And this, and I don't know how many people know this, but the actual date for the birth of Jesus was sufficiently uncertain that when they wanted to convert all the pagans of Rome to Christians of Rome, you want to do the best. You need good marketing for that, right? Because they already have gods and they already have their celebrations. You want to convince, no, there's not that many gods, there's only one God, all right? This is a hard sell. So what they did was they co-opted the pre-existing Saturnalia, and they put a day right after it, not during it because you could get confused, but put it close enough. You could wait those extra days, bada bing, December 21st. Now you give gifts on the birth of Jesus, rather than to celebrate Saturnalia. And so, and by the way, of course, we have some idea when Jesus was born from biblical writings. For example, Jesus of Nazareth was born in Bethlehem. Well, how did that happen? Well, the Romans were taking their census, and so they were in a different city. So when time of year did the Romans take their census, right? And there's some talk about what animals were out in pasture that would not have happened in December. It was because you're not grazing in December, you're grazing in the spring. Or some farmers knew how to interpret this. So my point is, he was probably born in the spring and not in December. So it was a matter of convenience in the transition in ancient Rome from pagan worship to monotheistic worship. So that's Saturnalia. But what I celebrate, so I'm cool with Saturn, but what I really celebrate is, of course, the perihelion. All right, that's an actual. Give me some perihelion.
Can I share my annual perihelion celebration? You go like this. Stick your hands in the air. You say "wee." You're going faster, right? Fast as fast could be. That's my perihelion celebration.
Okay, so here's my problem with that. Okay, the Earth in its orbit around the sun is completely weightless. So you're not feeling it.
Right.
The Earth isn't saying, wee, around it. There is no, it's just in free fall around the sun every moment of that trip. So it would just be sitting there.
On the backside, if you're on the night side, you're going a little bit faster.
Okay, I like that. On the night side of the Earth, during perihelion, you are moving faster than anybody at any time in the entire year, especially if you're
relative
on the
to the sun.
What's that?
Relative to the sun.
Relative to the sun. So that's an interesting. I have a similar weird fact like that. Okay, so the record for the farthest anyone has ever been from another human being. Okay. So that would have been Apollo 8 was, when it was on the far side of the moon. Of course, they didn't land, so they were the farthest at the time. However, Michael Collins, all right, the lone occupant of the command module during Apollo 11, is on the far side of the moon at a time the moon is farther, in its near apogee, and so they're all far from Earth, but now he is the moon's diameter plus his orbital height from any other human. And no one has ever been that far from another human in the history of the world. That's something like 2,500 miles isolated. So you get the diameter of the moon and then a little bit.
Yeah, at least alive, right?
Oh, you're talking about the remains of Gene Roddenberry? Is this what you're trying?
So, hey, we did have an interesting question. I'm kind of curious to get you. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but basically, a question for you is, it goes to the fact that we want to go to the moon and Mars, go back to the moon and go to Mars. But then, should we be spending money on climate change? Not that they're necessarily mutually exclusive, but what are your thoughts on money that goes into programs for exploration and versus, let's say, climate change? Yeah,
that's a really good question, and I'm happy if you're a fan of space exploration, but always found yourself sort of defensive at the dinner table with guests. I'm happy to offer some insights that might come to bear on your arguments. So, first of all, often when people cite space exploration as some draw of resources relative to other needs, those very same people rarely know or are able to recite exactly how much NASA is getting. In almost every case, I would ask them, how much do you think NASA is getting? And you hold up your tax dollar. Tell me, where would you cut it? And they're thinking 5%, 10%, and then I show them it's 4/10 of 1 penny of your tax dollar. And if you had scissors and you cut off 4/10 of 1% of the width of a dollar, you don't even get into the paint of the ink of the dollar. So are you going to say, let's not spend that 4/10 of 1% so that we can solve the rest of the 99.6% problems that we have? That's a little naive thinking that that's going to make the whole difference in your life, first of all. Second, take a look at the budget for the National Institutes of Health and the budget for the CDC. Yes, there are fluctuations from year to year, but add all that money together. It is multiples the money spent on NASA. Not to mention all the foundations that gather money to search for a cure for cancer and all the rest of our health needs. All I'm saying is, yeah, if we could take the 4/10 of 1% and apply it to the rest of the 99.6% and solve poverty and hunger, and if we could do all that, I think we should do it.
Right.
But do you really believe that's how that would play out? I'm not convinced. That's my first comment. Second comment, and this is, I think, my strongest comment here. If you take hospitals, for an example, all right? Just take a tour through a hospital and write down the name of every machine you see that has an on-off switch brought into the service of diagnosing the condition or aiding the condition of the human body without cutting you open. Okay, so leading that list would be, of course, the MRI, all right? And you have like the X-ray machines, and then you have PET scans and CAT scans and ultrasound. And look at all of these are tools, crucial, vital tools at the disposal of modern medicine. Every single one of those tools was invented by a physicist, and it's based on a principle of physics invented by a physicist who had no interest in medicine. So there was a connectivity between the point of the research discovery and the application that's keeping us alive. So you need a system that can transfer that knowledge and to be inventive with the technology, yes. But that technology wouldn't be there unless somebody was on the frontier doing frontier research. And you don't know in advance what research is going to and how it's going to play out. You don't know. But what you do know is that if you don't do it, you have ossified all technology based on the frontier of science into whatever moment you stop funding that science, and especially whatever moment you stopped funding the physics. So, because there's no understanding of chemistry without physics, and there's no understanding of biology without chemistry. And I say that having a degree in physics, so maybe I'm biased, but I think if you think it through yourself, you will agree. So yes, that's not a 30-second explanation. It doesn't fit in an elevator ride, but it needs to be communicated.
But I thought diseases just go away like a miracle. So you have to worry about
Well, it can. Yeah. So yeah, go back to the 14th century and watch people pray for miracles with the plague, and that was the only century in the history of our species where the population at the end was less than the population at the beginning.
Yeah.
Every other century, our population has grown, in spite of our wars and other disease and pestilence that has afflicted us. But in the 14th century, 1300, you were at peak accounting of diseases with religion and other sort of mystical, magical causes. And so, so it reminds me.
Well,
what's that?
I just want to kind of jump in because we do have some science people who are doing science boots on the ground. Some of our observers.
Oh, can we go to them? Yeah. I shouldn't hog the whole time.
Yeah.
No, forget me.
We have two intrepid observers, Stanley and Kuiper Cat, who have been waiting in the wings. They were standing outside for I don't know how long. Were you guys outside? Tell us, is it still cloudy outside, and are you frozen into little ice blocks?
Up, Stanley.
Oh,
Stanley,
hi there.
Hey, Stanley.
Stanley?
So I saw nothing but clouds and more clouds and a very hazy moon, which I can show you. I ended up taking a picture of that because I was bored. And now I'm back inside, so I don't feel cold anymore. And you see how I'm dressed. This is from Nepal, so I figured that it was appropriate for the weather that we're having.
To Sam Honda's point earlier on, always dress very appropriately, always dress warm, bring hand warmers, etc. Thank you, Stanley, for modeling that for us.
You look marvelous in that.
Yeah, I love this thing. I love it. It's the pigtails.
Yeah, always with stargazing, you want an extra layer than anything you'd otherwise wear under those temperatures, for sure.
Oh, well, I'm suitably layered, so to speak.
It's the AAA fashion show.
So if I can share, I'll show you if I can share a screen with you.
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
show you two photos.
And then Kat also has some images that she has to share.
Excuse me, it's Kuiper Cat. Just get that straight.
Yes, Kuiper Cat.
Okay, so share screen. Select window or screen. Okay. Oh, I see. Entire screen. What the heck?
And Mr. Roell was very thankful for your response on his question there.
Okay.
Okay, let's see what happens. I don't know this application, so. And
I saw blurry Saturn for a sec.
Is that your Saturn? Very nice.
it's not my Saturn.
Oops.
You could claim it and we just believe you.
Well, that didn't work, so sorry.
Well, you keep working on it. Let's hear from Kuiper Cat.
That is my
Right.
moon.
Kuiper
And
Cat.
that is- can you see that?
Oh, wait, no.
No, yeah.
That's me on my
screen
roof.
share and Kat, Kuiper Cat. How did you bear the cold? And I have some images of yours to share when you're ready.
So yeah, today was just a wash. Unfortunately, I was really hoping that it was going to work out.
You're observing from where?
I'm observing from Queens.
Queens. And Stanley, where were you observing from?
Brooklyn Heights,
Brooklyn Heights. Very nice. Okay. Uh-huh.
just like the
So-
Petty Duke show.
Really? Okay.
So yesterday, I took the chance and decided to go out for an entire hour and had a live stream. And I was able to get most of the conjunction until I lost it to, just the buildings around me. And then I moved over to Mars and the moon. But I did send a few images to Irene. The first image I actually took on Thursday night. And that was right after it stopped snowing.
And what was your equipment?
I used a Celestron 90 SLT and then my Canon M50 camera.
Nice.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
And then to
Wrong
infinity.
one. Is this the right one? So you can see
Gotta
that?
love Infinity.
Yeah, that's the right one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
so you're able to pick up a couple of the moons from Jupiter and the oblong shape of Saturn. So that I consider that a win, all things considered.
Definitely.
So you couldn't get Saturn moons? They weren't bright enough for you?
No, not with the camera.
'Cause
Also,
yeah,
I was contending with the visibility on Thursday wasn't as good as it was last night.
And
And we're getting
who's,
low to the horizon as well, so more
Yeah.
atmosphere.
and who's up on this? What's their separation in that image?
Ooh.
Is that about an arc minute?
Less than a full moon diameter. It would be
Yeah.
Oh, so many arc minutes. So
Yeah, it's probably like 8 to 9 arc minutes, maybe. Give or
Okay.
take. I'll tell you in a sec.
Actually, I thought the planets themselves are about 1 arc minute. Is that right?
I think this one they're not going to be much closer than.
So that's the field of view.
this is the field of view. This is the second one you sent me, Kat.
That was from last night. Yes, that
That's
was
very
with
cool.
my cell phone. That was with my cell phone in the same telescope.
That was an iPhone, probably, right?
Yes,
Yeah, iPhone 11.
The
iPhone XR.
Oh, nice. Okay.
13 arc minutes, 58 arc seconds. So that was the
Last night.
So I think at their closest point approach, they're going to be around
I think
6 arc minutes, give or take. At least for observing here.
Well, that should be for everybody.
One of our we had George Helios on last night, and he had his on I think like sharp cap screen with his setup, and we could see as you pointed out earlier, Neil, the different axes, because we could see Titan, and I think we might have been able to see Enceladus on Saturn. Kind of juxtaposed at a much different angle than the moons on Jupiter, which was kind of cool. As he cranked up the gain he had to really crank up the gain to get Jupiter really bloated out to see Titan and Enceladus on that screen.
Also, I'm curious about something, Kuiper Cat. I never looked it up, but is the brightness of Saturn, if it's at the same distance of Jupiter, about the same as Jupiter? Because the ball is smaller, but you have the rings to add to it. Because if they're about the same, then this is a perfect exercise in a factor of 2 distance and the 1 over squared law of the light getting to Saturn, and then it's got to come back to us, right? You get that reflective problem you have with asteroids. So this would be a really interesting 1 over square law lab project.
I wish it were. No, Jupiter was a lot brighter than Saturn, and so this.
Yeah, but is it like exactly 4 times brighter or whatever?
According to this, Saturn was plus 0.6 visual magnitude, and Jupiter was, I think, around a 2.
Oh yeah,
it's minus 2.
I thought it was minus 1.4, but
I mean, I'm just looking at what SkySafari's telling me as of last night. So minus 2 and plus 0.6. What it's telling me.
So this is one could do a really excellent 1 over r squared contest on this.
Yeah. Beautiful image, Kat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I tried to bring it in just a little bit. I kind of cleaned it up with some Photoshop Express. And I actually think that's not Titan. I think I may have mislabeled that. I think that might be either Enceladus or Rhea.
No, that's
Titan.
Oh, that's Titan.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other ones are much bigger.
Because
Wait,
of its distance
why
from
would
the
you-
rings.
Why would you think you got something other than Titan when Titan is like one of the biggest moons in the solar
Right.
system?
It's so shiny.
Yeah, it was one of those like it's 2 a.m. and I'm like, I think that maybe this is it, and I just went to bed.
Okay, well at least you didn't say it was a Kuiper Belt object because moniker. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bit more. It is maybe a little off plane of where I would expect Titan, but that it makes sense that it would be Titan.
And that was with the same phone, so that's the same image from before, just blown out a little bit more.
Yeah,
And
unless
then
Titan was behind
I
Saturn
always-
or something, and then this really is something else.
No, I checked it out.
Actually, I was looking last night through an eyepiece, and that's where Titan was.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's right. It was a couple Saturns away, so I think that's I saw it as well through the eyepiece after the live stream. So
Well, hello there.
And so this was after the stream because I was determined to give everyone a Christmas star, and so I happened to have a Christmas tree hoodie and Saturn and Jupiter pins and threw them on. I thought that would be funny, and that was my just in case we were clouded out.
Okay, so this is not
we're doing
Photoshop,
that tonight?
like you're. Okay.
I actually have the hoodie behind me, and I was wearing it earlier.
Cool.
So, Kat, did you have were you getting sort of public observers coming by and wanting to look through the eyepiece?
No, I am. So the area of Queens I'm in is a little industrial, so there isn't a lot of folks around me, which is great. It's kind of worked out in terms of pandemic. I don't have to worry too much about people approaching the scope. But the only downside to that, of course, is that since I'm on the water and we're overlooking the city, you lose a lot of detail as, objects start to set over the city, like Jupiter and Saturn, for example. And so eventually I just gave up and moved over to Mars and the moon.
Wait, just to be clear, that's not the city's fault. That's New Jersey's fault.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always.
Always.
Clouds never loom over Manhattan. They loom over New Jersey. That's where we get all our bad weather from. And that's what messes up all the beautiful sunsets. Okay.
Last night, by the way, at Brooklyn Bridge Park was phenomenal. I did not know what type of turnout it was going to be. And we wound up having dozens and dozens and dozens of people come by.
Just remind me, is Brooklyn Bridge Park where the that restaurant used to be that closed, that floating restaurant?
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
yeah.
That's on the Dumbo side. We were on
the Dumbo side, right there. And
Right.
It's got some structure,
Oh.
looks like a merry-go-round or something in a glass.
Correct.
cube.
Right. Actually, right. The person who actually redeveloped Dumbo, his wife, has restored that carousel. And
Oh,
then they
carousel,
donated-
yeah, good.
And then they donated it.
Pull
to
it
the park.
Ferris wheel carousel, of course it is.
Anyway, so we had it was really a great showing. Just people just kept coming in droves.
Is there any drawback? Because in 1999, I think it was, I was in center span of the Brooklyn Bridge observing the Leonids, which was at a 33-year high. At the time, it was great. Saw 3 or 4 meters per hour. But I'm just wondering, at the center span, you are above everything.
Right.
Okay, because the walkway comes up. You'd surely know this. So is there any value to possibly just pitching tent there instead of in the park? Then you get all the pedestrian traffic off that bridge.
Well, if you can avoid getting arrested, then yeah.
Yeah,
Some ordinance, no observing the universe from the bridge.
well, to Stanley's point, so we did it in conjunction. Talk about conjunction with the Brooklyn Bridge Park folks last night. So they were out there also. So it was an officially sanctioned Brooklyn Bridge Park event, and yeah, it was great. Really worked out well.
Would you call that a conjunction junction?
It was a
Yes.
conjunction junction.
Awesome. So I know we're winding down a little bit, but we have a question from YouTube, a YouTube viewer. You guys are amazing. Thanks, MB. Can you please give us some advice on what to look for in a good starter telescope? Continue looking up at the sky. So Kat, I know Brian, you recently got a telescope. Kat, Brian, do you want to comment on that?
Kat, go for it. You know my scope better than I do. You have the same scope, I think.
So, somewhat. So I have the 90 SLT from Celestron. You have the Celestron 127. So it's a little bit larger, but it's a Maxitoff telescope, and it's portable. It's lightweight. You can throw it in a backpack if you take the subway, and the paddle. It allows you to drive the telescope, and essentially it drives itself. And the learning curve is not that steep. So it's a very good first time use go-to telescope.
How much?
Ooh, so that's I guess it depends on the vendor. It's upwards of about $550.
I was gonna say actually you can get it for under 500.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
there you go.
Because for some people, the word starter telescopes means cheap telescope.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I
and
can tell you this, just to echo Kat, that you want to buy a telescope that you know you're going to use, and the fact that this fits in your backpack, you can take it to where you're going on whatever trip you're going. Because many of us don't have cars or easily accessible cars, so if it fits in your backpack, that's a big plus. And if you know someone, for example, who has a roof, and you just climb to the roof, and it becomes a really cool, easy thing to do. Now, when you have a paddle, does that mean you don't have to set it up? You just sort of dial it in. It's got GPS and everything.
Yeah, so once you just punch in the date, time, if you're daylight savings or standard, and once it's already set up for your location, so for New York City, for example, then you can do a 1-star alignment, 2-star alignment, solar system alignment. So if the moon is out, you can just use the moon as your guide. And then from there, as long as you don't bump it afterward, it's set and ready to go.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would say to be mindful of is, and I think it's cost versus, if you want to spend less, I think there's a lot of great scopes that can give you wonderful views of the planets, et cetera. But sometimes in New York City in particular, it's hard to find things if you don't know how to and where to look for them. And so that's where getting an understanding of how to use either a finder scope or a pointer within New York City makes it important. So if you don't spend the money on a go-to, if you don't have the money to spend on a go-to, spending some time in our club has a lot of I think helpful experience to help parties that want to do that. So there are many resources out there today, but that's I think one of the things in addition to portability that should be mindful of is it's not easy if you don't know what's in the night sky to figure out where things are.
That's really excellent additional point there, because I've been lost in if I visit some other place and there's some slice of the sky. There's like clouds, and then the clouds move and there's like a star visible. Oh, Neil, what star is that? I said, I have no freaking idea. I need the full context of the full sky so I can triangulate my way there. And such is the challenge in the night sky from the city, because you don't have all your sight lines to get the rest of your benchmarks or your milestones as you navigate the sky. So the electrical guide will definitely help that. And if you can spare the 500, and you'll use it for the next 20 years, just amortize that, and it's easy to justify.
Yeah, and if you don't, you can buy a travel scope, a nice 70 millimeter Celestron travel scope for probably $70 or $80 now, maybe less. And you probably need to replace the tripod that comes with it to have a little sturdier there. But you can certainly spend less than $100 and have a scope that you can enjoy the rings of Saturn with. And they're easy to find. You just have to align the scope. So
the rings of Saturn, the weather bands on Jupiter, the mountains, valleys, craters on the moon. You can still get pretty far.
I would say I always recommend a good pair of binoculars. Very portable, forces you to learn the sky. And I know we just got stands set up in here, which also looks very portable. Maybe based on the camera,
the bridge is in there. Very cool.
Oh, beautiful.
Did Isabel take that?
Yes, of course. My wife took the shot. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I would just add to this discussion.
The tripod looks kind of like you need another tripod. That's what that looks like.
Yeah, it was a quick and dirty tripod.
Yeah, it looks really wobbly, but
yeah. But I would just add to this conversation what not to buy as a starter scope, and
that tripod.
Well, that's not for a telescope. That's just my DSLR. But
probably heavier than some telescopes.
Don't buy a Newtonian. I was at one of our events a year or two ago, and there was a family who had bought their kid as a birthday present a Newtonian telescope, which was not go-to, and trying to point that thing in New York when you don't have a lot of experience doing that, that's really a bad idea. So
I'm going to say caveat, that's because a lot of those don't come with good finders. If you have a Newtonian, case in point, really easy to set up, really easy to aim if you have a good finder. So throw out the red dot finder that comes with most telescopes, just put it in the trash. That's where most of them belong. Invest in a Telred or a Rigel quick finder, and you can find your way around the sky easy peasy. And I mean that.
Easy peasy, is that
throw away your red
trademark.
Yeah,
that's trademark.
No, I have a red dot finder. I was okay with my red dot finder.
Yeah.
But maybe you have more experience though. Like if you're just starting off with a red dot, a lot of times they're so hard to align.
Okay.
In my experience, they're not as sturdy.
So last night we had a number of people that came into the park. They came with their binoculars, and they also came as John was saying that they had no idea that we existed, and they had no idea that you could see these things from New York. And they were so blown away that they could be inside of New York City and see what they saw. It was really.
How did they know about the event?
Our advertising it along with the park.
Very nice.
Well, that just I think it's Yogi Berra who said, "It's amazing what you can see just by looking."
I usually think of Sherlock. You could look, but you need to observe.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining in. Really appreciate this cloudy night edition of our conjunction live stream.
I'm going to try for Tuesday.
Try for Tuesday. All
Yeah,
right.
and I guess maybe to that point, Irene. So we do have it scheduled for the next several nights, and it does look like there will be some windows in the next few nights that we'll be able to see this again. And then we do have one of our members is remote out in New Mexico and clear skies all the way through. So we're making plans to make sure there's additional live viewings available to you of this very interesting event.
And we're not jealous of him at all.
Excellent to be a multi-time zone club. Yeah.
You don't have to be in New York City to be a member. If you want to join, you're welcome to join.
Absolutely. Go to AAA.org.
AAA.org.
So, all right, guys, I'm out.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Good night,
Thanks,
world.
everyone, who's watching.
Clear skies the next few days, guys.
Take care.
Bye.